Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we're doing a sight guide for Battlefield 4. We're going to be looking at every single sight in the game, talking about the pros and cons. I'll let you know which ones are my favorite, and hopefully this guide will help you save a little bit of in-game cash. Since all the sights do cost money, this will at least let you preview them before you buy. Starting off here, we have the Reflex Rds, although they should call it the YDS because it's got a yellow reticle in the center. The reticle itself is unnecessarily large in my opinion and could kind of hinder some of your more precise aiming. I'm not a big fan of this sight in general. It's got fairly large housing and a fairly large reticle. Next we have the Kobra Site, which is one of my favorite sights from BF3 and BF4. It has a much thinner housing, although some players might not like the targeting reticle. It can be a little bit trickier to get headshots with this targeting reticle, although I like it because it doesn't get lost in explosions quite so easily. Then we have the Hollow 1 times, which has a fairly unique targeting reticle for this game. It has very large housing, and that's always been my issue with this optic in game. In real life, it makes it a very robust sight, but in game, you don't really see those benefits. Next, we see our first aim point sight making an appearance in Battlefield. This is the Comp M4S, and it's got a very nice precise targeting reticle in the center. The housing is also fairly minimal except for the large battery compartment in the lower right. Then we have another red dot sight. This is the Micro T1. It's very well known, it's very rugged in real life, and it's an awesome little RDS. Unfortunately, in game it's got a lot of housing around it, and I have a feeling I'm not really going to be using it too much. The Srs O2 is also a new addition to Battlefield Hardline, and this is actually a green dot sight, so they're kind of mixing it up with some colors here. Sadly, the housing is very thick on this one, and basically this is going to allow a lot of infantry to sneak around in that area, and you're not going to have line of sight on them at all. Then we have the Pkas, which has an interesting targeting reticle with a little black ring around the red dot in the center. The housing is also really minimal, making it a highly competitive RDS. Putting my top three sights side by side, we have the Kobra on the left, the Pkas in the center, and the Comp M4S on the right. It's clear from this comparison that the Kobra has the least obstructive housing. Although it is a bit thicker by the base, that's not really going to get in the way of infantry tracking. However, if you actually prefer the dot reticle for precision shooting, then I would recommend the Comp M4S on the right. This scope has less black gradation around the inner rim, giving it an overall clearer sight picture. It's also a slightly larger sight picture. Its only real downside is that large battery compartment on the lower right side. You can, however, pick up this sight very inexpensively, so that kind of makes up for it, and it allows you to purchase other weapon accessories with your leftover cash. Now let's take a look at the infrared night vision scope on the left and the FLIR 2x scope on the right. Both these optics will provide clear images in dark environments. They'll also allow you to see through smoke grenades. The pros of the infrared night vision scope are that it's considerably cheaper than the FLIR sight, and it also has a slightly larger optic picture. The benefits of the FLIR are that it has 2x magnification and a slightly clearer image. Moving on to the medium range optics, we see the return of the M145 3.4x scope. This scope has a really cool reticle in the center. I like it a lot. Unfortunately, it has a very large housing around the outside of the scope, making it hard to track or find targets. Then we have the PO 3.5x scope. I really like the minimal housing around this optic, and it's also got a fairly low price range. Without question, this optic will be showing up on some of my battle rifle loadouts. Now, of course, we gotta have the Acog 4x scope in the game. It's very hard to have a tactical shooter these days without the Acog. It's a very popular scope in real life. And this time around, Hardline has actually updated the targeting reticle in the center. It used to have the chevron, now we have a nice little circle. I have a feeling it's going to be a lot easier to aim with this scope. The housing isn't too minimal, but compared to the other 4x scopes, it's pretty usable. Then of course we're seeing the PSO 4x scope make a return. This thing is huge, it's got a very large model, so it's going to be big on your gun when you're running around, probably obstructing part of your screen. It's also got a very large housing. I personally like the targeting reticle on this scope, but it's mostly going to be a nostalgic scope. On the bright side though, it has a very low price point, so if you want a dirt cheap 4x scope, you can pick this one up. Now let's talk long range scopes, the ones you'll be mounting on your sniper rifles. This one here is the TA648 6x scope. It's basically an Acog but with 6x magnification. I personally like the targeting reticle, but you're not going to want to use this for extreme long range shooting, so put it on a rifle that you're more comfortable with using from long range to medium range to close quarters if you have to in a pinch. Next is the Pks Oh Seven. This is the 7x scope, and the only reason I can think of for using this scope is if you really like chevrons as opposed to crosshairs. Personally, I'm not as big a fan of this because it makes it harder to actually aim over somebody's head at a distance. Then we have the 8x rifle scope, and this is the same scope I've been using in Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, and I'll be using it in Battlefield Hardline. You'll notice the sight picture goes almost from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen. This scope makes the best use of the screen real estate out of any of the other scopes out there. And the distance marks makes it easy for you to walk your shot in when shooting at further ranges. And last, for the long range scopes, we have the Hunter 14x scope. It's very similar to the rifle scope. It's just a higher magnification, and it doesn't make quite as good use of the screen real estate. So something you'll want to use at extreme long range. You're probably not going to get too much use out of it in a competitive scenario. Now let's take a look at the two canted sights in this game. Say you have a high-powered scope, but you need something for close quarters. You can equip a canted sight and quickly switch over to that by hitting T on the keyboard. Unfortunately, the canted iron sights looks like it's going to be very hard to aim with, and I can't really recommend this. However, Hardline is now the first Battlefield game to offer a Canted Red Dot Sight, which is really cool. I actually like this canted sight a lot, and it's going to give us the opportunity to create some interesting hybrid setups. I can see a lot of guns of mine now using an Acog and a Canted Red Dot. The pistol optics are fairly similar to what we had in Battlefield 4. The standard iron sights on an M9 look pretty easy to use. Then we have the improved iron sights, which in my opinion are not improved at all. I'd rather use normal iron sights. Then we have the mini RDS, same as Battlefield 4, probably going to be my pistol optic of choice. And then we have the Delta RDS, which has a slightly larger targeting reticle. Not exactly ideal for precision shooting, but then again, sometimes when you have your sidearm out and ready, it's more of a spam fire situation. Anyway, that wraps it up for all the optics available in the Battlefield Hardline beta. I believe that's pretty much a complete list of what we're going to see into the final launch of the game. I hope this video helps you guys get an idea of what kind of optics you're going to want to unlock for your weapons, and that way you can save a little bit of cash and spend it on other things like class enhancements and stuff like that. As always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.